Hello and thank you. This is Jason Padgett with Ag Made Fun. I'm here because I know that some of you all probably have your DIY kit. I hope that you have your DIY kit for the Raise and Shine Raised Bed Garden Kit. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to make your own raised bed garden. Now I have some examples with me, but what I want you to understand is that I want you to be creative and to create your own version of your raised bed garden. But first, let's go through the supplies in your kit. You should have some cardboard pieces. You should have some seeds. You should have a styrofoam plate or some kind of paper plate. You should have tape and a spoon, and in your other bags, you should have the soil, which is used for all the other activities as well. So what I want to do is just kind of teach you about a raised bed garden, what the difference between a raised bed garden and a in-ground garden. So the raised bed garden is just think of a bed. It's just raised up off the ground. It's not in ground, but it's above ground. If you see the border are the walls, so the wood of a raised bed garden are the walls. And so when we have our strips that we're going to cut with our cardboard pieces, we are creating those walls for our garden. So you're probably thinking, hey, what kind of design can I make with my garden? Well, let's just think of some simple 2D shapes. Some simple 2D shapes could be star, arrow, hexagon, rectangle, trapezoid, oval, heart, and a triangle. These are some examples. Now let me give you some other examples of some, I guess, like I see the shapes, but I don't really understand what you're talking about. For example, you have a square, low wall raised bed garden. This is an example of a square, high wall raised bed garden. At the bottom, you have a steel, wooden, square, rectangular prism. If you're thinking about your shapes, this is more of a rectangular prism. This is a high wall rectangular raised bed garden. And last but not least, you have a circular or an oval raised bed garden. So these are just some examples of a raised bed garden. Let me show you exactly what an in-ground garden is. This is an in-ground garden. An in-ground garden is, just say if you just took a shovel and just dug into the dirt, you are planting in the ground. So nothing is above ground, everything is in ground. I love the board ideas because I said maybe these are the walls, but no, those are the spaces that they're walking on so that if it's muddy, they don't get mud on their feet. But this is a cool idea and an awesome recommendation or for a in-ground garden. So this is an example of an in-ground garden. What we're making is a raised bed garden. So the activity is called Raise and Shine Raised Bed Garden. We kind of it's a kind of play on words of rise and shine, but we're just saying Raise and Shine Raised Bed Garden. So what you should have is a paper plate. Those of you all that have another paper plate, the other paper plate, once you make your raised bed garden, you're going to put your garden on top of another plate. And that is because you don't want any of the water or the soil to kind of poke through and mess up your garden. Also, you should have some newspaper in your kit as well. What is the newspaper for? It's for to keep a clean work area. So let's get started. So I'll take my newspaper, spread it out. Now, you may say, how much newspaper do I need? Well, how dirty do you think that you're going to get when you do your garden activity? So let's keep it simple. So here we go. I am doing this is my styrofoam plate, and I have a marker. Forgot about you need a marker as well because you need to draw your shape. So the shape that I'm going to do is I am going to do let's do a rectangle. Now, let me show you some other activities, some other examples of my rectangle garden. This is an example of my rectangle garden. has the high walls. Depending on what kind of seeds you are growing, it will depend on what kind of garden you need to make. So if you're growing a seed that, let's say a flower that shoots straight up, the stems are pretty tall, you may want a raised bed garden where the walls are pretty tall, because you want enough soil to support the stem and the root so it won't tilt over. This is my example of a trapezoid raised bed garden. You're probably thinking, well, you don't have any cardboard pieces. Well, I don't. I just wanted to use any pieces that I have at home, so I used some popsicle sticks. I used some tape just to secure my walls. This is my example of a square, frosted flake, high wall square garden or rectangle garden, depending on what you see. And lastly, my example of my circle garden, which is also a frosted flake garden as well. So let's get started. Get your marker. And like I said, doing a square garden, a rectangle garden, so I'm going to draw my shape on my plate. Make sure you have scissors as well. So draw your shape. If you want a long or a tall garden, or a big garden, you most certainly can, but make sure that you have enough supplies for that. I take my scissors, make sure that when you cut, this is a very important thing, you cut away from your body. So do not cut into your body, and also cut away from your body. So I'm cutting the shape of my plate into a rectangle. And I always say what you grow is what you should grow what you like. Don't grow anything that you may not like eating, or anything that you don't want to see growing, like flowers. Grow what you like planting. So this is the base or the frame. This is almost like building a house. If you want to relate this to STEM, I am relating this almost to a architecture or a landscape engineer. I can take this example and present this to, I guess, a landscape architect, and ask them to reproduce this for me. So what I take now is I take my cardboard pieces, and now this is where the math comes in. I see that I have 2 short ends and 2 tall ends. So what I need to do is I need to cut and this is not an easy, I don't want to say not an easy thing, but we're just not going to take just a piece of cardboard and just cut a rectangle out of it. No, we're going to deconstruct this board or this cardboard into pieces and build our walls. So now we're building the walls for our garden. So I have, the type of seeds I have, it's a 16 beans mix. So beans, they pretty much grow on a vine. So I need my walls pretty tall. So I'm making a tall raised bed garden, a tall wall. Now you're probably thinking, do my walls have to be even? I guess that's to each his own. You have some that want everything to be perfect, and that is all fine, good, and well. But I know that with a garden, a lot of times, the most important thing is to make sure that you give the garden what it needs, which is air, light, water, and nutrients. If you notice, I did not say soil, because in the standards, especially when I was teaching kindergarten and first grade, they said no mention of soil, but they said nutrients. So what I'm using, even though I'm using soil today, typically in my activities, I don't use soil, I use soilless material. So what's soilless material? Well, perlite, which is lava from a volcano, cocoa coir, which is the outside of a coconut that has been shaved, vermiculite, which is a material that comes from the base of a volcano. And I also use like rock wool sometimes, which is spun volcanic rock from a volcano. So with my raised bed garden, my square, my rectangle, I see that I cut 4 pieces out. So with my 4 pieces, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of measure on the side of my, the side of the walls or the side of my rectangle, just to see exactly how I want to do it. So now that I have my walls cut out, I just take the tape And when you take the tape, what you want to do is you want to put tape on the sides and also in the middle, because you want to make sure that you secure your walls. So I'm putting tape on the bottom. Now you need to decide on if you want your, if you're using a, like I'm using a Texas Toast cardboard. So I need to decide if I want the Texas Toast to see or do I want the cardboard to see. So we'll see. So remember, I'm putting it on the sides, on the corners, and also in the middle. Why? Because I want to make sure that I secure it and it does not come apart. Now, is there only one way to do this activity? Absolutely not. One thing about STEM is a process of you just figuring out a problem. So what I'm going to do, and if this overlaps, which it may do, I'm going to show you a little trick. So what I'm going to do now is just going to take my cardboard pieces and put them on the edge and secure the tape underneath so it stands up tall. Now see that I have a little overlap, so I'm going to curve it. And that curve, a lot of times with a shape, is called a vertex. Last time it's called a corner, but I'm going to create a vertex as well. And that vertex, I'm just going to make that corner there and tuck it in. Now I have one side wall of my garden already there. So with this side here, if you have that, just kind of tuck it in. Now mind me, now those of you that are following me and making a rectangle garden, this is the way you would do it. But what if you were making a star garden or an arrow garden? Then I just want you to learn the concept of what to do and how to do it. You do not have to make a rectangle garden like I'm making it, but if you want to, you most certainly can. I just want to teach you the concept of how to do it, what to do it. Because there's not one way to skin a cat, and there's not one way to make this garden as well. Also, since I have some overlap, what I'm going to do, I'm going to tape, put some tape on the overlap to the other side of the garden. But still, remember that same thing. One cool thing, you just, if you lose your space with the tape, just kind of put, just kind of leave a little edge out and just kind of put it on the end of the table so you know how to go back and get those pieces again. There you go. And of course, you can use scissors to cut the end of your pieces as well, depending on what tape you're using. Even though I gave you some tape, you may decide to use your own tape, which is perfectly fine. That's where the customization kind of comes in with this whole project. But be very careful with the scissors as well. All right. All right, so right now I have 2/3 done. So I'm just going to take my other pieces and do the same thing all the way around. Cut my pieces. And if you want to cut your pieces ahead of time, your strips out ahead of time, you most certainly can, because this is a self-paced activity. So however you find it better, however it works for you, you make it work. Like I said, I just want to teach you a concept of how to do it. This reminds me of like a cooking show. I watch a lot of cooking shows. Does anybody out there watch cooking shows too? Like I like watching Beaten Bobby Flay and Chopped, you know, a lot of those self-taught cooking shows. So it's kind of fun being able to do this for you all. There's a lot of people may not have the opportunity to do it live like I normally do. So let's give you the opportunity to do it at your own pace. So there I go, securing it to the bottom of it. Alrighty, we're almost on the home stretch, And this is not a race, especially when you're doing it by yourself. It's not a race because you want to make sure, because we're going to add soil and water to this, you want to make sure that you secure all the gaps and make sure that there's no pieces that, or no holes or gaps in your activity. And if you notice that these are the materials that we're using are materials that you can simply find at your house. You know, during the pandemic that we're in, it was amazing that a lot of people did not have the supplies to do this, and so I didn't want people to go out there and buy supplies if they didn't have to. I wanted to see how we can use the things that we use, I guess products that we can find at home. See how we can use that to make a garden and just kind of be creative. There's a lot of people, a lot of my friends started to make gardens. I get phone calls all the time. Hey, Jason, how do you make a garden? I said, oh man. So you see how easy this is. My square garden is on this home stretch. We're almost finished. And don't forget, because keep the tape, because there's another activity that you have, which is the self-watering garden that you'll need the tape for as a just in case. You may not need it, but I say I gave you enough tape so that you can use it for multiple activities. The soil also goes for multiple activities as well. So this is not just a one activity type of supply that you'll need. So we're sharing supplies with yourself and with your other activities that you have to do as well. So be mindful of that when you're putting your gardens together. This is the only activity that you'll need the cardboard for. So you can use as much cardboard as you would like to. Just FYI. What you think? Pretty cool? I think so. All right, almost there. Now you probably think, oh, I'm done. Not quite. Because what you have to do is we have to realize that we are putting soil in here. So now my walls are secure. I have my walls up, but are they secure? Are they gonna fall down? Probably not. But guess what? I see some holes on the inside of my garden. So what I have to make sure that I do is to go back and secure those holes and those gaps, because remember, this is a functional garden. I don't know if you knew that, but this is a garden that really works. Maybe I'll show you this, my little garden right here. I have some seeds, some plants growing in there. This is a garden that you can water, and you do not want water to fall through at all. That's what you don't want. All right, so we have our tape. So what I need to make sure I do, you see that my garden walls are up, but are they secure? I didn't realize that I used 2 walls that have the print and 2 walls that does not have the print. Well, hey, that's mine. So what I'm going to do is to cut some tape off and secure. So I need to look on the back side and see if I have any gaps and secure that with tape. Like I said, this is a functional garden that you will be able to use. And you're probably thinking, after I use this garden, where do I put it? Well, because you're using cardboard, I would not put it outside, not yet. What you mean by not yet? Not yet means you wanna start the germination process inside. What's the germination process, you may ask? Well, germination process is that when you start a seed wants warmth. They don't need light. You know, going through the process of like photosynthesis, you know, a seed doesn't need light when it first starts to grow. They need warmth. That's why you cover seed with soil and, and you added water and because it needs that warmth. Once it has that warmth, that seed starts to open up and it produces the root. So it can have a foundation. That's why we started with our styrofoam plate, the foundation. And then you go from there. So there we go. So I'm almost done. I'm going to my last side. What I did, and I have a lot of tape left, so this activity, depending on the size of your garden, you should not use the whole roll of tape. If you do, use the whole roll of tape, and you need more, Dollar Tree has it. 6 for $1. Shh. Here you go. All right. There you go. Now, my garden is done, but not quite. One thing about a garden is that I need to poke some holes in my garden. Why do you poke holes in the garden? You poke holes in the garden because one thing about a garden needs water, but it does not need to sit always in water. So what I need to do is create some drainage. So be very careful. I'm taking my scissors. I'm just gonna poke. Typically I tell kids to, I ask, how old are you? And I say, poke that many holes. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am, but I'm just gonna poke until I finish counting to 10. When I'm counting from 10, and then I'm gonna go back. I'm going from 10 to 0, then I'm gonna stop. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. You wanna know how old I am? I'm 10. That's how old I am. All right, here we go. Next thing I want to do is I want to get my other plate, or if you don't have a plate, just get any material that, especially if you're a kid, make sure you get parent permission or parental permission to put another container that can hold the water. Want to do, and I'm just going to put my garden on top of my plate, and I'm adding my soil now. This is my soil. So what we're making is what's called a seed sandwich. Say that with me, seed sandwich. What is a seed sandwich? One of my favorite sandwiches now is a veggie burger. It's a veggie sandwich. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add my soil. And you see why I added newspaper down here. Then I'm gonna add my seeds. The soil is the bread. The seeds is my veggie patty. Add my seeds. And it's a 16 bean seed, so you get all kind of seeds. I love this mixture. So I added my bread. I added my veggie patty. Now you're probably thinking, am I vegetarian? Not all the way, but I do like veggie burgers though. And I'll add my last thing, which is my other piece of bread, and I cover it. My seed sandwich. Now, this may sound crazy, but it's true. Does anybody know anything about the dab? You do? Oh, you don't? Well, if you don't know anything about the dab, here's the dab. Why did I preface the dab? Well, the dab is a dance where I'm gonna teach you a little bit about science. One thing about the dab, you cannot see through a dab. So when things are opaque, you got three things. You got, this is a transparent cup. Translucent is something that you can kind of barely see through, much like this tape. Just think of like a container, like a plastic container that's kind of cloudy. That's transparent. But with something that is, where the light is blocked, that's called opaque. One thing about that is that seeds do not want light, seeds want darkness to germinate. And that's why I say, hey, you need to dab your seeds. That's why we say we make that seed sandwich. That's why seeds are not on top. Seeds are in the middle so that you can cover your seeds. That's why we gave you that concept. I'm all about teaching concepts. So I need to just water my garden. And it's amazing because when I water my garden, the reason why we put the other plate on the under the garden is because if you have any leakage which may happen because soil is only going to contain as much that it needs. It's going to just come through. But if you notice, nothing came through. Why? Because the soil absorbed the water. So I'm going to add all of this water on here. Why add all the water? Because I see that it can retain the water. What does retain mean? Retain means to keep or to keep back. There's a little leakage, but that's okay. Wow. So that is the DIY raised bed garden activity. The raise and shine raised bed garden activity. That is that from start to finish. What you do after this activity is you put this activity, you put your garden in a sunny windowsill. Why in a sunny windowsill? Because with photosynthesis, like I said, a seed does not need light right now. It needs light later on. So with it needing light later on, what you need to do is that when that seed when the seed germinates and the root is established and the little stem start coming up through the soil or through your soil medium, whichever one you decide to use outside of the soil, then you have the light from the sun is already shining on that stem, and then that stem can go through that whole thing about the chloroplast and the chlorophyll. It can go through that whole photosynthesis process. Thank you for joining me. This is Jason Paget with Ag Made Fun, showing you how we do our DIY raise and shine raised bed garden. Thank you.